Okay, well, guys, if you want to turn on your phones, you can be live on Facebook too.
Sad,
You can watch too. The two judge candidates who are waiting off to the side can also see. So I'm Tara Bassett, and this is Take It From Tara, and I'm so glad to have you guys with us this afternoon because we have a remarkable set of people in the studio today. We're at Lamu, which is my studio for the day. And see how beautiful you look, guys? There's your little monitor, so you can see Emily Digenis to my right and Derwin Webb to my left. Annie O'Connell and Darryl Lavery are waiting off to the side, and they're going to take the second half hour. But what I really wanted to do today is kind of what we did in March with some of the family court judges. We had Judge Lauren Adams Ogden. We had, or is it Ogden Adams? Which is it? Adams Ogden? I thought it was. So sorry, Lauren. You know who I mean. And she didn't call me Tara, so I really shouldn't have done that to her. And we had Lori Goodwin, and we had Shelley Santry, and we had Brian Gatewood. And it was a great discussion because it gave you all a chance to see exactly who it is that is going to be filling the court seat that you might be in front of. And you know, not too many people have paid a lot of attention to the judicial branch of government until recently. And it's gotten quite a bit of airtime recently here.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. So what I really want to do is make absolutely sure that people know when they go into the voting booths on November the 6th who they're voting for. And it's going to be a great chance to do that. Now, this is not a debate. We're going to have a friendly conversation. I want you to get to know Derwin. I want you to get to know Emily. And I'm going to ask them in just a minute. Now, be thinking about this, you two. No. I want to hear 2 adjectives to describe yourselves. So think about that. Now, I'm not going to ask the other 2 judge candidates this question because they've already heard it. So, you know, they'll have like half an hour to think about it. But I'd like you to think of 2 adjectives to introduce yourselves with. And I also just want to make sure that we know this. The supporters who are watching, we appreciate you for being here, and we ask you to just watch the tone of your comments because I will delete you and then I'll block you. So let's keep it positive here because this is supposed to be an educational and informational format. Just get that out of the way right now. Okay, so family court, and this is a definition, is a division of circuit court, and the judge elected from this panel will hear cases involving divorces, adoption, child custody, support, domestic violence, juvenile status offenses, so much more. It covers so many areas, and many, many citizens appear in family court at some time in their lives, so you guys are going to be well served to know the people who just may be judging you, so to speak. So let's start with our introductions and 2 adjectives about character. I've flipped a coin, and you get to go first. Counselor Digenis.
Thank you, and thank you, Tara, for having us on the show.
You're more than welcome.
Kevin Granger and Lamu and all the other candidates that we've survived this long. So, okay, 2 adjectives. My gosh, there are so many. I would have to say competent and compassionate.
Very nice. Thank you very much. Judge Webb.
Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it. If there are 2 adjectives that describe me, I'll take the 2 that have been said about me recently: calm and unflappable. Those are the 2 things I've heard recently.
Good job. We talked a little bit before about judicial temperament, and this has been, you know, a pretty big conversation that's been going on. And this is not on script, so I'm just going to ask you guys this completely off the cuff. Emily, scoot forward just a little bit for me. Do you mind? No, don't be sorry. I didn't set your chair clearly. Tell me what your definition of judicial judicial temperament is. I'd like to know what each of you think is required of a judge. So temperamentally.
When I think of judicial temperament, I think of what my parents instilled in me, which is to treat everybody with civility and dignity and respect, and the ability to be able to treat people with that regardless of their background or socioeconomic factors or what they're in court for. I think that to me is judicial temperament. The ability to also be objective and fair and compassionate. But for me, it stems from those core values that I was taught as a child, which is to treat everyone with dignity and respect.
I think that's a very good thing about dignity and respect, and it's unfortunately been lacking a lot. So talk to me a little bit about judicial temperament.
I believe judicial temperament has to go back to many of the things that Emily has stated, but being fair and being equitable regardless of the situation. I can give you a perfect example. I had a situation today just in court where I had a gentleman that was very belligerent, and regardless of the things that he said, you had to be fair and equal regardless of how he was approaching me.
Yeah.
I want my court to be a court where people feel as if they can say the things that need to be said, but at the same time, I'm going to treat them with the same type of dignity and respect that I would want to receive. So I believe your judicial temperament is something, the things I've just stated, but it has to be carried forward, because it's hard to maintain your composure when someone's saying something that you don't necessarily agree with, or it could be personally attacking at the same time. So it has to be exercised at the same time.
Very good. Okay,
Yeah.
we're off on the same boat here. We've got pretty much agreement on that. Now we go into the real questions, and I've actually asked each one of the judge candidates to submit a few questions for me to insert into the dialogue. I've also gotten some questions from other judges and some attorneys, and then some just, the old man on the street or woman on the street type thing. Ask the question, what do you think that you'd like to know about these judges? So I'm going to start with you, Judge Webb. Why are endorsements so important to voters? Because this is something people want to know. Why is it important that the union of widgets is going to, support a particular judge candidate? And what does that endorsement mean to you as a candidate?
Well, traditionally, endorsements are made because of your qualifications and the things that you bring to the table. So, for example, when Citizens for Better Judges endorses a candidate, it means that there's been an evaluation of someone's professional experience, how they feel that person would be in court. So when someone endorses you, it lets them know that they have gone through a certain test or a certain review to say that they're the most qualified person for the position. Are they important? Absolutely. I believe that they're important, whether it's a union endorsement, whether it's Citizens for Better Judges, whether it's a poll done by practitioners. I think they're extremely important because it lets someone know who they're dealing with. It lets someone know that they have been certified and qualified, if you will, to be able to perform a specific job or a specific duty. That's why I'm happy to receive the endorsements I've received. I'm sure that Emily's happy to receive the endorsements she's received also, but I do believe that that is what it takes to let people know who you are.
Sounds wonderful.
I might add on that,
Sure.
as well, that getting a variety of endorsements as well shows widespread support from the community. And I think that's important when we're talking about an elected position like the judicial bench, and that is that you represent your constituents, and that's important to have those types of endorsements as well.
Absolutely. So you're up next.
Oh, yes.
You ready for this one? Okay.
Please.
It's highly unlikely that a stay-at-home parent is going to have the same kind of income that maybe a partner who's working full-time might have. So unless you're working from home, doing something that brings in a lot of money, and that's not always the case in many circumstances. So court costs like custody evaluators and guardians ad litem and attorney representation, those things are often just out the roof. So how, as a judge, can you ensure parity between complainants who may not be on an equal financial footing?
So that's a great question, considering that I was a litigant in family court way back when, and I was a parent who had put their spouse through school and through residency and through fellowship, and sort of took a back seat in my career to raise children. And while that was wonderful and I was blessed and privileged to do that, yes, when it came time for that divorce, it was difficult at best to pay for attorneys or pay for a counselor. In our case, we did not need a guardian ad litem, thank God, because those are appointed by court when there's usually child abuse or neglect.
Okay.
With that said, though, I think with everything in family court is a court of equity, and you have to balance out how those are funneled out. And so we look at the income of both spouses, and if you have a spouse that does not have the income or the income base to have an effective trial, there are times where you would have to advance court costs or attorney's fees. Those come into play, but again, it's a balancing act, because you don't also want to penalize the parent who is the working parent as well, who took on that or shouldered that onus or responsibility, because I've had it both sides in that I was a single mom too.
Yeah.
So it's a balancing act. You can also make sure that you control your courtroom, in that you have to manage attorneys, and attorneys will ask for everything under the sun if they can, right? I mean, they like to hear themselves talk. We're all part of that. So I think that's an important thing, to manage that courtroom as much as possible so that you can contain court costs as much as possible. And then finally, you have to look at what's in the best interest, particularly with children. If you need to have a counselor, that is going to give you the eyes and ears of the court, or a friend of the court, you have to look at the costs that are involved in that. So that is a balancing act that a judge has to do, taking into consideration the disparity between incomes of both parents.
Okay.
I mean, if I may expound upon that as well, there are some things that a judge has discretion to do. There are some fees that can be waived through form of paupers that a person can actually petition the court to see if they will qualify for something like that. So we look at the incomes of both parties to see if they can actually qualify for, if you will, for that to be waived, so to speak. And so we can do things like that. But we will look at a lot of different things. We'll look at who was the breadwinner in the family. We'll look at how much a person's paying per hour. We look at all things just to make sure that there's some type of equity within the situation that's in front of the court. So I agree with her on that. But there are some other things we can do as well by trying to waive some of the fees that a person is not able to pay, whether it's trying to get that person not only a guardian ad litem, but person maybe a public defender to help out with certain things.
That's good.
So there are a lot of different things we can do.
There's also the mediation clinic, Ackerson Mediation Clinic, that our
great.
Wonderful friend Shelley Santry, the U of L professor, who has established at U of L that you could, especially with a lot of pro se litigants or litigants who don't have an attorney, and so they represent themselves. That's something that we encourage, and mediation is something that I think a judge routinely in family court should probably try to at least mandate on some levels, because it does contain court costs down. If you can get people to take control of their cases, so to speak, and their lives, then before they hit the courtroom, if you can, distill down the 11 issues that they had to maybe 3, then it also manages that court docket for other more serious issues. So mediation clinic at the Ackerson, I know the LBA does a pro bono legal clinic, all of those things. So we have a good community there are outreach programs that I think can help.
And it keeps you guys from being exhausted, because you already have full court dockets.
Well, I would tell you, it keeps us from being exhausted, but at the same time, I try and tell people that come to court, you don't want me deciding your case.
Yeah.
You know more about your case than me, so if you want to go to mediation, we'll send you to mediation first. If you can't make a decision based upon everything that's in front of you that you already know about, you're forcing me to make the decision. But as a judge, I would rather 2 people decide amongst themselves what child support is going to be. If there's going to be some type of visitation, or who's going to have primary custody, or who's going to be the non-custodial parent. Because if it's left up to us, we'll make the right decision based upon the information that we have. But we also want to encourage people to be agreeable at some point.
What's the difference between a good lawyer and a great lawyer?
Are you asking me that question?
Yes, sir.
The difference between a good lawyer and a great lawyer, in my opinion, a lawyer that actually listens. A great lawyer will listen to what a client is actually needing, not necessarily making the decisions for that client. They take everything into effect that's going to affect everyone. So a great lawyer listens to his client, or listens to his or her client, listen to what they actually need, and trying to help that person make the best decision based upon what they need, not necessarily what the lawyer thinks that person needs.
Michelle James says hello to all of us. David James' wife, who is lovely. I'm going to just pop these in here. Say hi, guys. Big Dave
Michelle.
Johnson. Evan Stoner wants to know what your views are on child support. He says his biological father is over $80,000 behind in child support payments with no repercussions from the city of Louisville. That's incredible. We'll ask that question. Janelle Fitzpatrick is watching us from Southern Indiana, who's running for school board. So she's seeing what she's getting herself into, because we're going to be doing this in a couple weeks. James Green, thanks you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you. So let's go on with a couple of other questions that I've got, and then we'll hit that one too. Emily, this stuff is hard work, and I've wondered, as you guys have gone through this campaign, how you stay awake, how you stay on your feet from 6 o'clock in the morning to very late at night. What do you do to take care of Emily, and what do you do to keep yourself healthy?
A bag of Doritos. So first, let me say that it's been a privilege to run. I have met people from across the county that I would not have otherwise had the opportunity to me, like you, Tara.
Thank you.
And that has been a privilege. And so the exhaustion that you feel, the physical exhaustion, sort of takes, second stage to the fact that it's such a privilege to run, and especially as a daughter of, first generation immigrants, it's just really cool. So anyway, with that said, what does Emily do? So I come from a very tight-knit family, and so family dinners, getting together with them often. I'm a spiritual person, so trying to get to church, although there are times that I'm so exhausted that, God forgive me.
You sleep through church? I've been known to do that too, don't feel bad.
But I think also it's important to really surround yourself with people that bring you joy. And so I am blessed with people from across the county, whether it be at the union halls or someone the other day brought dinner over to me. So I just surround myself with people that are good for Emily. Of course, always talking to my kids works, but I'm an empty nester, as most people know, and so anything to do with family suffices for me. And then I try to walk around the block and get a little bit of oxygen and say, okay, this is what's important in life. Remember that. And
oxygen is good.
Yes, it is. For that. And then every now and again, I have to go to some place and get something really ridiculously decadent, like
here we are.
Caramel cake at Lily's or something like that.
Lamu, by the way, is our host tonight, and Darryl. I'm looking at Darryl. Kevin Grangier, thank you so much for having Darryl Lavery and Annie O'Connell and Derwin Webb and Emily Digenis all in to the restaurant tonight. We appreciate you, and he always is such a superb host, so I appreciate that. So I just have a quote here from Chief Justice of Kentucky, John Minton. He said, substance abuse is among the most common factors identified in child welfare cases before the courts. And court dockets are full of cases involving parents and guardians who are putting themselves and their kids at risk. How judges handle these cases impacts families and children throughout Kentucky. So I want to know a little bit about drug court, and if you could explain its function within the family court system.
Okay, let's call it Family Recovery Court.
Family Recovery Court, okay.
Recovery Court. It's just established. And hopefully we'll have our first case next month with Judge Denise Brown running point for us as well. I'm a former basketball player, so I always have to speak in basketball analogies. Family Treatment Court has been, Family Recovery Court has been put in place to basically give a family an opportunity. For example, I used to be an attorney, and one of the biggest problems I had with being an attorney representing clients is that you never got to the root of the problem. I felt as if I was a high-paid Band-Aid provider that would put a Band-Aid over a situation, but never really going back to find out why that person was committing the crime or doing the addiction that they were doing. Family Recovery Court just does that. It pulls back, it brings back all the issues and tries to get at the root of the problem to find out why that person is addicted to drugs, to try and give them an opportunity to have a home, employment, find out what is enabling to do what they're doing at the present time, but trying to find solutions to their problem. It's going to be strictly voluntary. Not everyone that wants to be in Family Recovery Court is going to get in, because you have to voluntarily do it, and then you have to perform the steps based upon that. And it's going to be to conclusion. So in summary, it's a voluntary program that gives a person the opportunity to get back to where they need to be, find out what's causing them the problems that they're having, and hopefully the court, along with all the service providers that are with the court, provide them with an opportunity to get back to where they need to be, and hopefully reunify them with their families.
Very good.
I wanted to add to that. I think we do have to herald the fact that a group of women from the National Council of Jewish Women, and particularly Jane Emke, pushed this through and raised the money that we needed, because it had existed before and then they lost their funding. So something like that just shows the power of this community to really rally around a holistic approach to helping people through their issues. And when you give people the tools and the mechanisms and afford them the support that they need, particularly with drug addiction or mental issues that they're experiencing because of the drugs, then ultimately we see less children going to foster care. We see fewer families being torn apart. Socioeconomic problems don't tank because people are spending money on drugs. Children are not abused or neglected as much. So hats off to the NCJW and the fact that we have family court judges that are willing to put their time and effort into that, and hopefully we'll have the funding to maintain that for a very long time.
And I want to bring up the fact that...
Can I say something real quick?
Sure.
If you don't mind me saying this,
Sure.
especially since you brought up Jane's name, they need more money.
Oh yeah,
they do.
Jane would be
Absolutely.
the first person to tell you that they need more money. Of course, being a judge, I can't ask or promote, ask for more money.
No, but
for
I
the program,
can.
But
Could you give
they
Jane
need
some more money, please?
Yes.
Well, I think the point is that we're trying to make is that this is a program that needs to be sustained
needs
in
to be
this
funded.
community.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
So we'll go on to the next topic of mental health, which is something that you just mentioned, Emily, and I want to talk about the fact that there are at least 75,000 individuals on the streets of Louisville with mental health issues. Homelessness and drug addiction are comorbid with those particular issues. And so you're going to be dealing with cases involving mental health problems, and that's kind of an unholy trio, I call it. What do you do to prepare yourself with problems that are foreign to so many of us? And in the interest of full disclosure, I work at Bridgehaven Mental Health Services, and you have been to functions there, so you're a little bit familiar with it.
I have, and thank goodness for places like Bridgehaven. And a couple of years ago, I think, Tara, I went to a lunch and learn and found out about Bridgehaven. Sadly, there are so many people that suffer from depression and anxiety and serious mental illness, and so I became very I think it's important, especially as a practitioner in family court where we do see these issues. It's important to know what resources are available to us and avail ourselves of that and be educated on that. So Bridgehaven is one of those places. Centerstone, for instance, is another place. But Bridgehaven, to me, again, afforded people an opportunity to have a community and a sense of family. And so often, just like the one lady that we met, and I won't disclose her name for purposes of privacy, but the fact that she had no family. Family had sort of abandoned her because they could not deal with her, as they said. And she left when she was very young, got married when she was barely 16. And so thankfully she got Bridgehaven to help insulate her and gave her the opportunity and the skills to have a job and to have and lead a productive life. Because I think many people look at it in the years past as a stigma and something that they could not handle. So, having the resources like Bridgehaven or places that we would know about, like the Healing Place, for instance, where as judges that we can work with them and outsource that is such a treasure for us, and Louisville should be very proud of those services.
Big help.
May I add along to
Sure,
that?
and I'm going to ask you a mental health question too.
Okay, I was going to say, as a judge, it's easier to deal with those situations because I've actually had to deal with those situations as a public defender. I was a public defender in Southern Indiana for about 5 years or so prior to me coming to the bench, and it gave me an opportunity to see those people firsthand and deal with them firsthand. As a parent's attorney on the docket that I'm actually over right now for dependency, neglect, and abuse cases, you were giving cases that dealt with issues of mental illness as well as an attorney. So having firsthand knowledge of those type of situations along with the people that I had to represent, I believe prepared me to be in front of them as their judge now.
Very good. Now I'm going to ask you guys to give me short answers to the next 3 questions because
Rapid
we've
fire.
got 5 minutes left to it. You guys have done a great job. Thank you both so much. By the way, we're interviewing a couple of candidates for family court, Derwin Webb, Emily Digenis. You'll be able to make the call on November the 6th, and the last couple questions should give you a little bit of insight into them. Tell me about the new co-parenting law, which I've heard about, and how it's affected the award of maintenance and the tax consequences for people who are getting a divorce. So how are you going to deal with that?
So, Kentucky can be proud in the sense that we are one of the first states to have adopted a presumption for joint custody and 50-50 shared parenting. And so I think it's House Bill 528 that really gives us a starting point from the judicial bench to presume that what's in the best interest of children is to have both parents involved. And they're shaking a margarita, so that's great.
Don't get excited.
Yeah, sorry. That just distracted me. Ding, okay, squirrel. So we go from the point of the jumping point, so to speak, of the presumption is there that children fare better when both parents are involved.
Right.
So I think, that's a great thing to have because, there were a lot of fathers' rights that were being kind of diluted. So I think the legislature saw a need to sort of right an imbalance in that. The problem with that is that now the new tax law for that is that you will no longer be allowed to deduct as maintenance or alimony, the person who's paying it. So I think that's what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of problems with settlements. In the past, when we were in settlements, particularly in mediation, that was sort of a bargaining point to prevent someone having to go to court because we could say, look, if you pay maintenance, that will be deductible to you as the payor, be income to the person receiving it. But now it's not deductible, and I think that's going to cause a lot of friction, a lot of problems in mediation down. But also, before 2018, a lot of people are going to spur to get in the court system before the end of the year, if they can, get a hearing to get those divorces settled.
Very good. And Judge Webb, I'm going to ask you this final question because
Sure.
we're out of time, and those two over there are getting very impatient. They're going to be ordering margaritas before we know it. Chop, chop. So can you explain a little bit about parental rights and responsibilities and how what I consider them to be Solomonic decisions are made? Because for years I know a court would return a child to its mother unless it was something just extraordinary, like being in jail, or I don't know what the definition of unfit was, but that's what they used to call it. So how are you fair and compassionate at the same time in situations like that?
Well, you have to be. The automatic goal is, if we're speaking of like the dependence, neglect, and abuse cases. For example, when we remove a child from someone, the ultimate goal is to return the child to status quo. So if the child was with the mother initially, your goal is to return the child to the mother at some point. Now, there are different things that the mother may have to do. For example, she may be ordered to go to counseling. She may be ordered to take substance abuse evaluations or do X, Y, or Z. Our goal is, if that person does all those things that we require the person to do with child protective services, with all the service providers, and with their parents' attorney, and get recommendations from the guardians, hopefully the goal is to return that child back to that parent, because that's what we're hoping is going to be the best interest of the child. But at the end of the day, we have to do what's in the best interest of the child. It's not what's in the best interest of that mother or that father. It's what's in the best interest of that child. And if going back to that mom is the best interest, that's what we're going to try and do as a judge.
I think the answer to that, too, would be that being compassionate and doing what's right go kind of hand in hand. If you're looking at the standard of what's in the best interest for a child, if that means going back to the mother or the father or a kinship or an adoptive parent, that's what you're charged to do with. And so that's what compassion is to me. It's what's in the best interest, as facilitated as possible, to get that child in a forever home, because they deserve that. They deserve that.
I don't want to be the person who's making these decisions, so I'm glad that you guys are all the ones who are going to do that. And I want to thank you both for taking the time to be here. We could have gone for an hour easily. Yes. And we will owe Annie and Darryl at least a minute. So you guys will have to make the arrangements with the margaritas or whatever it is that you're going to do. You are off to doing something else. You are off to doing something else. Thank you both for being here. Appreciate you guys. I'll shake both of your hands and go, look at that. Isn't that special?
Yes.
Kumbaya. Let's go on. Take off those mics so that we don't take them away. And thank you so much. I appreciate it. And now we are bringing on the next A team. Thank you so much, Judge. Appreciate it. And in this corner, we have Annie O'Connell and
Darryl Lavery.
Hi, Darryl. How are you? Thank you both, you guys. I appreciate you. So they took a little bit of extra time. I want you to forgive me for allowing them to do that.
That's just fine.
I was about to pull out the muzzles.
Right.
I won't do that with you guys.
Totally
I promise.
fine.
So we have, as you heard, I don't know if you could hear some of the questions because it's a little bit noisy in here at times, but they're family court judges that you just met. These two are a little bit different, circuit court judges. And I just want to give a quick definition of that too. Circuit court, tell me if I'm wrong or if anything you want to add. Circuit courts have the authority to try cases that involve the law, citizens, and businesses, including civil disputes that amount to $10,000 or $15,000. I'm not quite sure which. I've gotten two different opinions. Criminal cases and violations of family law. They may also appeal federal cases from district courts, particularly those that question whether current laws are constitutional. Did I cover it pretty well?
You have parts of it were a little off, but then parts of it were right spot on. So I can tell you if
go ahead.
you'd like.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in circuit court, we handle all felonies.
Damn Wikipedia.
And we also handle civil cases where the dispute is over $5,000. We also handle appeals from administrative agencies.
Okay.
We handle appeals from the district court.
Okay.
And we handle all property cases, foreclosures.
Wow.
That's really the vast majority of what we do. We do a few other things on the periphery, but that's 98% of all that goes on.
I think you hit on one of the most common questions that I think we both get on the campaign trail, which is, what does a circuit court judge do? I think a lot of people find themselves in the voting booth frequently not knowing what district judges do, what family judges do, what circuit judges do, and I feel like a big piece of our campaign has been about educating the public about what a circuit judge does.
Well, the other thing, too, is that I think I remember this because my brother-in-law was a judge in Florida, and I remember there was some story about they literally would ride their horses from circuit to circuit, which is why they called them a circuit
That's
judge.
why it's called a circuit.
It just go round and round.
Yes.
Right.
You know,
we don't do that anymore.
Thank God.
Well, some do. Some out in the state actually have 3 counties.
I wonder if they ride horses.
Probably not.
Maybe
but
in some.
in Wyoming they do it.
Right.
Oh, do they really? God, that's good to know. So, 2 adjectives about character. Annie, I'm going to ask you to go first.
I would say smart and hardworking.
Darryl?
Well,
Judge?
she stole mine of hardworking. So I would say hardworking and committed, because that's definitely an attribute I think that's very important to have when it comes to all the work we do in circuit court, is being committed to making the right decision and getting it right.
What's your educational background, Annie? Where did you go to school?
So I graduated.
high school.
I was going to say that's a loaded question
That's
in
the Louisville
Louisville.
question. Where did you
Sacred
go to
Heart
school?
Academy, class of '95. I went to the Honors College of the State Florida system called New College. And then I graduated from law school here at U of L and graduated in 2006 and became a lawyer and stayed here to continue my practice, and that's where I've been since.
Very good. Judge?
I went to the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. It's a archdiocesan college right in our nation's capital. Absolutely loved it. And then I came back to Southern Indiana to ultimately go to Indianapolis Law School at Indiana University School of Law in Indianapolis, so I could get the in-state tuition, because at the
There you
time
go.
I grew up in Southern Indiana. So. But I always knew I wanted to make Louisville my home, so right after graduating from law school, I came right here to Louisville.
Outstanding. So if an attorney is defending or representing a party, obviously unprepared, incapable, they don't have the legal ability, do you as a judge intervene in any way? In your experience, Judge Lavery, do you actually step in if an attorney is just not prepared?
Yeah, I've really not had that happen, and I've seen a lot of attorneys of varying skill come before me in the year plus that I've been on the bench. Luckily, I will say that we have a lot of excellent attorneys in Louisville, both in civil cases and criminal cases that have come before me. I haven't really seen that, but I do think there may be times when that does happen. You could have, for example, an attorney who's impaired because of drug addiction or alcohol abuse, where I do think in situations like that it would be incumbent upon the court to intervene, and there's ways to handle that, of course in a sensitive, confidential way. But luckily I've not had to deal with that, but I can see a situation like in a situation of substance abuse where that could happen.
Yeah, that would be unfortunate. What do you see as the strengths and weaknesses of the present family court?
Family court?
The present family court that you're running for?
You're saying family court. I'm running for circuit court.
So,
okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I can talk about family court if you
Why don't you
want.
go ahead and run for family court? Go ahead, circuit court.
Well, I guess I would start by saying that the Louisville Metro Jail is currently not just the city's largest detox facility, but it's actually the largest detox facility in the state. You were speaking with the family court candidates previously about the issue of drug addiction, particularly opioid addiction in our community. And that doesn't affect just family courts, it affects all courts and really all institutions across the city. We've seen an increasing number of people arrive in courts who are suffering from drug addiction as the underlying cause of what landed them there in the first place. And so I think the court system is really struggling with ways to, of course, hold people accountable when that's appropriate, but also to try to connect them with services and alternative forms of treatment and assistance that will contribute to lowering recidivism rates, so that someone doesn't find themselves back in court over and over and over again.
And I'm glad that you guys are letting me ask all the questions that I had, because those other two, man, they just had to comment on everybody else's answers. So here we go. There's been I think there's a huge challenge, and there's been a lot of news about this too, to support a legal position that your personal moral beliefs may not agree with. How do you uphold a law that you just think is 100% wrong?
Well, that's what we do. I mean,
yeah, but it's got to be hard.
It is hard, but at the end of the day, we are there as an independent branch of government, the judiciary. We do not make the laws. The legislature makes the laws, and we follow those laws. And we take situations each and every day, complex fact patterns, and apply those to the law, and do the best we can in applying the law. We may not like what the law requires, but that is what we do. And I think we go down a dangerous path when we have judges that may not follow the law and are guided by their own personal beliefs or personal positions, and get away from the law. That's just a dangerous path to go down. So I do think, we've got a great system in place where you elect members of the legislature, Senate, House of Representatives, the General Assembly here in Kentucky. They make the laws, and once they make the laws, we follow the laws and apply the law to everyone equally. So we're all under one set of laws, all of us at this table, everyone in this restaurant, and we know what the expectation is, we know what the law is, how to follow it, and what happens when we don't follow it. And if you have a situation where a judge is just going to rule or choose not to follow a law because they personally don't believe it, I think you get in a very willy-nilly situation, and it's just a dangerous situation.
So let's say you have something coming before you, Counselor O'Connell, and you don't have any clue. I mean, you literally have never run across this in your legal career. No attorney, no judge has ever heard of this particular situation. And you have just a matter of days to master that law and to apply it in this particular case. What do you do? How do you prepare yourself?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, one of my characteristics is being smart. And I think part of being smart is recognizing what you don't know and how to frame and ask questions and find answers to the questions that you don't know. I think first and foremost, I would go to my colleagues and discuss with them what their experience is, any recommendations they had about where to go find those answers. Darryl and I are both lawyers, graduated right around the same time, have about the same number of years of experience, but we come from sort of vastly different practices. No judge who arrives on the circuit court bench is going to know everything, but being able to find the answers and also have the humility to know when I don't know. I don't mean to keep sort of talking in circles, know what I don't know, but have the humility to understand and recognize that I don't know everything, and to seek advice from people who do and find the right answers.
Judge Lavery, ready?
Tara.
You got it. Good job.
Although, as I told you before, my secretary's name is Tara.
It's terrible, isn't it?
And I have another friend who's Tara, so I have to
thank
just,
God,
it's a
there's
constant
2 to
debate
1.
in my mind.
2 to
every
1.
day.
2 to 1,
All right.
Tara. It's been noted that individuals who have borderline personality disorder, who have narcissistic personality disorder, are very capable of manipulating the system in many regards. So what training in mental health becomes available to a judge? Is that if it's something that that the court system would provide, particularly in recognizing personality disorders, and then how do you spot them and apply in that particular judgment the knowledge that you have that guy just may not be what he pretends to be?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, really, as circuit judges, certainly since I've been on the bench since last summer, we have not received any mental health training. That's probably something that it would be helpful for us to have. Frankly, I think it would also be a great idea to have judges undergo much more training to learn about alcohol abuse and drug abuse,
right,
and learn kind of more the ins and outs of that. But we have situations where I know when individuals are before me, many of them, and they don't have to have a personality disorder, will tell me what I want to hear, and will be a different person before me than they are out in the community. I mean, I see people who have committed horrific acts in the community who come before me and they look like a young, innocent person who would never do any of the things that they're alleged to have done. So it's a combination of taking in the person that is before you at the time, looking at their full story. We also get information like before we sentence someone, there's a pre-sentence investigation report that's there that kind of gives a full comprehensive picture of someone before us, before we make a determination on sentencing. If there are issues with competency, there's a mechanism in place for those individuals to be tested, to have their competency evaluated by not only someone an objective person that's going to evaluate them, but their own attorney can also have someone retained to assess that individual as well. So there's a lot of various tools in place that we use. I wouldn't say one of them really is me personally doing a psychological evaluation of someone who's before me.
Right.
I really utilize other folks to do that. So I just kind of utilize all those other tools, in essence, to help me make a decision about a particular person.
Well,
May I respond to that
You sure
quickly?
can,
Okay.
yes.
So I think this is one of the reasons that it's really important to have judges on the bench who have worked with a variety of people from all walks of life. When I graduated from law school, I went to work in the public defender's office, and there worked with clients who could not afford to hire lawyers to represent themselves because socioeconomic status frequently overlaps with conditions such as drug addiction or mental illness. I represented a number of clients who experienced various mental health issues across the board, not just narcissistic or personality disorders that you're talking about, but schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, all across the spectrum. One of the benefits of being a public defender and representing clients within that population is that I became very familiar with the services and resources that are available in the community. For example, like Bridgehaven, because I sometimes functioned as both a lawyer and a social worker in the sense that I needed to connect my clients with services, but also as an advocate, educate judges about the full picture of my clients' lives and what was going on there. What I would also say is that we have a tremendous resource in Jefferson County court system. You talked about the alternative drug court and family court, or family recovery court, as Judge Webb called it. But we also have a mental health court as well, both in district court and circuit court. And I have had the benefit of having clients who have worked their way through that court system as an alternative to incarceration where that was appropriate.
And I'm going to invite the two of you, if you would like to learn more about mental health, to come to Bridgehaven Mental Health Services. And
Sure.
I have a monthly luncheon, and we'll be glad to
Great.
educate you. I think it would be fun.
Sadly, the mental health court now, I've tried to refer numerous people there over the last few months, and it's completely full. and we've not been able to refer anyone else there. So we really need more mental health court. We need
That
more
breaks
drug
my
court.
heart. That breaks my heart. So let me acknowledge a few of the folks who are watching us, and we've got a nice crowd right now. So I'll just say hi to. I know. I'll say hi to a few people: Don Walker Pendleton, Donald Armstrong Jr., Ron Zender, David Finley, Darryl Lavery is watching. This is awesome. I love that.
Apparently, it's on my phone.
Troy Harbin, Susan Smith, Tina Kraft Mall, Jerry Steinberg, Alan Miller, Dan Holler, Shannon Favre. Everybody knows Shannon Favre.
That's right.
John Burgraff, Brett Howard, Dale
Johnny.
Cigarette, and Jennifer Pitzer Brown. Shannon says yes, Tara. Hi, Shannon. Shannon has been a frequent guest on Take It From Tara, talking about legal issues too. So I appreciate her very much. So, I asked the family court judges some questions about specific things that they handled in this particular case. But what I would like to ask you is more of a detailed, not procedural question, but something more about what you bring to this particular court as a circuit court judge. What are some of the things that have prepared you in your life to take on this huge responsibility?
So one of my favorite quotes is from Justice Sonia Sotomayor, and she says that a judge's life experience affects the facts that they see. Prior to going to law school, after I graduated from college, I moved to Washington, D.C., and I worked for a national women's rights organization and organized on college campuses around the issues of equal pay, access to health care, et cetera. I then worked for the Institute of Medicine on an HIV/AIDS study that we delivered to Congress. And that was all before I went to law school. I knew coming back to law school, much like Darryl, actually, I came back so that I could get the in-state tuition because I knew that I was going to practice law in the public interest, whatever that ended up being. It ended up being a public defender. But as a public defender, as I mentioned before, I worked with people with addiction issues, with mental health issues. I have represented hundreds of clients and logged thousands of hours in every court in Jefferson County. Personally, I'm very familiar with the issues surrounding addiction. A lot of people know because it was actually very public. My brother died of a heroin overdose. And it is not only the professional experiences, but the personal experiences that you bring with you as a judge that informs not only the work that you do, but also how you treat people in your court.
And I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
If I'm a witness in your courtroom, Judge Lavery, and something really inappropriate happens, for instance, the button on my blouse today has not been cooperating. So if something should happen that, was it Janet Jackson who had the wardrobe malfunction?
I think it was.
Many years ago?
It was.
So if something
Luckily
like
she
that,
wasn't in a courtroom at the time.
Exactly. If something like that were to happen, what would you do? I mean, this is just kind of one of those immediate response questions. What do you do when something inappropriate happens? Or say an attorney throws his arm around, the witness's shoulders and refers to them by their first name when they've been referring to everybody else by, the Mr. and Ms. What do you do in those situations?
Well, I would say, it's tough to say in the abstract until I figure out what the situation is to figure out how I would deal with that particular situation. But in circuit court, you have a variety of odd things that go on on a daily basis, quite honestly. But I think part of it is...
So just go ahead, give us an example.
Well,
what are some of the
I'll
odd
give
things
one
that
example.
go on?
It was a criminal defendant who I do think has some mental health issues and began shouting at me in the course of the hearing. And rather than me fly off the cuff and shout back or talk down to him in any way, I just said in a very low tone, I said, "You don't have to yell at me." And he kind of calmed down and he said he wanted to talk, and I said, "Okay, you can talk." I said, "Just don't yell at me, and I'll give you an opportunity to say whatever you want to say." And then when he realized I wasn't going to fight back with him on the bench, you could see all that anger that he had just kind of went out of his body.
Right.
And he started explaining kind of what his issue was, and at the end of the day, he didn't feel like he was heard. And you talked before about things of what prepare us.
Yeah.
And one of the things that prepared me for this is I knew as a lawyer and also when I've seen my clients go to court, they want to be heard. They want to be heard by the judge. They want to have their day in court. And this gentleman had his day in court, but there's a lot of people that have their day in court and they still don't feel like they're being heard. So I let this gentleman be heard, and for him to tell what was on his mind, many times it's not wise for criminal defendants to speak freely.
Speak freely, I love
sometimes they incriminate themselves, and so I tell many of the folks who come in, I say you should listen to your lawyer in terms of whether or not you should say things here on the record as you're being recorded about your case, but that said, if you want to speak to me, I'll listen to what you say. And a lot of times the things that they want to tell me are just parts of the story that their attorney hasn't put forth for me. And so they tell me kind of the other part of the story. And a lot of times the things that they have to tell me are important. And I'm glad that I hear them. So that's just one example. So it's really kind of being present. We're all human. No matter what we've done, we're not known by the things we did in our past. I'm optimistic about everyone. I see the good in everyone. So obviously that doesn't mean I'm naive either. You have to hold people accountable when you've given them an opportunity to pick a better path and they don't do it. But we're all human. We all need to be listened to. We all need to be treated fairly. And everyone needs to have their day in court.
May I respond?
You may. Go right ahead.
So the specific question that you asked was using the example about your blouse, right?
And I do have it taped, by the way.
So in my experience, those kinds of issues are really about wardrobe and conduct. Unfortunately, when people find themselves in circuit court, it can often be one of the worst moments in their lives. And I personally believe that issues related to wardrobe or conduct, where, sure, everybody needs to adhere to a certain standard of respect for each other within the courtroom, but those matters pale in comparison to the seriousness of the issues at hand. There are also serious moments in court that do require intervention. For example, before we went on camera, actually, we were all talking about someone we know who had a medical episode recently in court that required emergency intervention. I have personally witnessed sheriff's deputies in courts in district, family, and circuit court really do an amazing job, both of responding to medical emergencies, if that's appropriate, but also the ability to de-escalate a situation.
Right. Because
people are so often unhappy and it's a contentious and adversarial process, emotions can become get out of hand in court. And I think it's working with the sheriff's deputies as well as everybody else in the courtroom to de-escalate, to keep everybody safe, but also focused on the real issues at hand.
What makes you the best candidate for the position that you're seeking?
My experience. As I mentioned, I have represented hundreds of clients from all walks of life. I have worked in every single county in Jefferson, every single court in Jefferson County, as well as numerous courts throughout the state. I have handled not only criminal matters, but civil matters as well. I have tried numerous high-profile, complex cases in the Jefferson Circuit Court system, including 2 death penalty trials. I can hit the ground running.
Well, I have the same answer. It would be.
It has to be different.
It would be that I'm the most qualified for this position.
Yes.
What a lot of people may not know is the makeup of the caseload in circuit court. Each division of circuit court has a little over 200 criminal cases and over 800 civil cases.
Wow.
So about 80+% of all cases in circuit court are civil cases. Involving a wide variety of cases, because you can file a civil lawsuit about almost anything. So I spent 16 years in civil litigation and tried cases both in state court and federal court. handling complex civil cases, representing a wide variety of civil clients, from individuals, nonprofit organizations like the YMCA, large corporations, national corporations here, and international corporations as well, and the wide variety of civil cases that we've had. I also have, since I've been on the bench here over a year now, have handled literally thousands of criminal proceedings. I have presided over multiple murder trials. I've presided over drug trafficking trials, gun trials, sexual abuse trials. I've handled suppression hearings. I've written opinions on a wide variety of criminal matters. So I have both private practice experience of 16 years. I have judicial experience. I have 16 years of civil practice experience. I now have, through this position here, significant criminal law experience as well. So I really think that having the civil experience is and really that's one of the things that really differentiates the two of us, is we just come from different backgrounds. It's not to say one's right or one's wrong, but I do think that I have the very diverse background that we need on circuit court.
How did you prepare for this discussion? Or any of the discussions? You guys have been involved in
Does 11
debates.
months of campaigning count as experience? As preparing for, yes.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, you asked us to prepare some questions and give you some ideas, and
and you did. Thank you.
I watched your previous videos, and yeah.
That group of family court judges was fun.
That was
you
great.
have to admit
That was
it.
great.
Shelley Santry just can't bottle her.
She is a ball of energy.
She
but
was
she
sitting
is,
right here to my left.
She is so much fun to be around.
It's a lot of fun.
And I really actually missed her on the campaign trail because she had a great sense of humor. So the way I prepared for today is I had a margarita right over there while the family court judges.
That was when Emily noticed
Candidates,
that the
that's
thing
right.
was shaking away here.
And-
Why wasn't I invited
Yeah,
for Margaret?
exactly.
And full disclosure, that's a total joke. I did not
It
drink
was a
before I
total
came
joke.
on.
None of them
But
did.
they are making drinks all around us, so.
And they're wanting to finish this up so that they
That's
can
right.
go and enjoy their dinners. Which
Annie
is the
has
most
assured
important
me
thing.
drinks are on her when we're finished.
Oh,
so
lovely! That's
we're
so
good
sweet.
to go.
Okay, so thank you both. I appreciate you both. And just in one sentence, Annie, would you please just tell us your unique qualification? If you had one thing to describe yourself, your unique qualification to be this judge.
I've represented people from all walks of life. I've represented men, women, children. I've represented poor people to millionaires. And I've represented those people at some of the worst times of their lives. And I believe we are all greater than the worst mistake that we've made. And I think bringing that perspective will enable me to bring a level of compassion to the circuit court bench that's really required.
And what is it that makes you laugh? We need to know this.
Parks and Recreation, 30 Rock. Yeah,
Fun sitcoms.
Yes.
Is that your relaxation?
it is, yes.
How about you, Judge? What makes you laugh?
Well, I have really great, funny friends, and I like to think I'm funny myself.
You are funny. He's a
You do
funny
crack
guy.
yourself up.
Yeah, so I try to be in a good mood as much as I can, and pumped up, and be a joy to be around, and I laugh at a lot of things, you know.
You're both joys to be around.
Yes.
Thank you
Oh,
so
thanks,
much
Tara.
for taking the time.
Thank you
I
for
appreciate
Thank
having
you,
it.
and thanks to Lemieux for allowing
Absolutely.
us to
Exactly.
Yeah.
have this discussion in
To
this space.
congregate.
Yes.
Thanks, Kevin
Thanks, Tara.
Grangier. I appreciate you both. So on the 6th of November, one more thing real quick. You're going to explain the ballot deal.
Oh, sure.
That's important.
So the circuit court race is on the back of the ballot. So what you'll want to do when you're finished voting for everyone on the front, flip over the ballot will be the top race at the top of the ballot. And I drew the first ballot position, so I'm the first name at the top.
And I'm the second because she got the first. There's no joke about it. I would have preferred to have been the first on the ballot.
Change your name.
But that's just, it's a random draw.
random.
And
Oh,
I just
you
had
had-
Yeah.
terrible luck that day. So I'm the second on the ballot, but it's easy to remember because second on the ballot for the second division of circuit court.
Oh, that's so clever.
That's what I came up with, for being the second position. That's the best I got.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you.
Good to see you.
We'll go turn off the camera, and I'll see you Wednesday for Wagon Wednesday. Tune in. All right.
Now we have free time.
May we
as
remove
she's still recording,
mics?
and she is going over to turn it off.
Shut you off.